sorry about that interruption, it was one of my housemates. So, anyway, as I was saying, when young peregrines learn to fly, because they don't look a lot like their parents, which are greyish blue, they tend to look quite dirty brown and quite scruffy looking, but when they learn to fly, their parents will teach them how to hunt and fend for themselves until they are eventually ready to fly off and find their own territories and raise their own chicks. And despite their challenges and their low strike rate, urban peregrines are on the rise. To this day, over 30 of the world's fastest animals now soar over London, making them the second largest population of urban peregrines in the world, second only to New York in North America. So, if you are ever in a city with a peregrine population, be sure to keep your eyes on the sky. Of course, here is a map of where you can see these birds across Britain. And of course, they've made a dramatic recovery over the last few decades. And now the next animal I'm going to show you all is one that you probably really wouldn't expect. It's the stoat. Now, stoats are in the Weasel-Family, and the Weasel-Family are a group of animals well known for punching above their weight, taking on animals many times their own size, and having no fear whatsoever. They are top predators and one of 7 British species of weasels, and they are a fearless predator that can tackle prey 8 times their own weight. And stoats are found in places like urban areas, gardens, rivers and wetlands, coastal or marshland, or woodland, grassland, or even mixed woodland, heathland, moorland and farmland across Britain. And of course, as long as there are plenty of prey and shelter for them, they pretty much thrive, but they are very shy and very elusive and very rarely seen. As I mentioned earlier, stoats are in the weasel family, which makes them very fearless animals. They mostly take rodents such as voles, mice and rats, as well as birds and their eggs, but their favourite prey is rabbits, which can actually be quite dangerous because they are 8 times the size and weight of a stoat, and their hind legs can deliver a kick that could prove fatal. Stoats have many methods of hunting prey. I mean, the first one is like to chase a rabbit using stamina to wear the rabbit down before they go in and go for the throat. But they can also climb and swim, and they can, even incredibly, they've even been seen in hypnotising rabbits, like performing jumps and jives, which just seem to put the rabbits under a spell, and they don't even run away. They just keep staring at the stoat, and that allows the stoat to get closer and closer, and then bang. In fact, it's this dance of death, as it's called, that allows the stoat to tackle adult rabbits that are 8 times their own weight. Stoats are usually solitary throughout the year, except when they come together to breed and have young, which are called kits. Of course, when the young are born, the male has to defend their territory against rivals, so while he's busy defending their territory, the female is providing for their young, and as soon as they grow old enough, they're ready to disperse and find their own territories. And of course, while stoats are in the weasel family, they are quite often confused for their smaller weasel cousin, but of course they are different to their they're a lot different. I mean, they're bigger and they're darker brown. Of course, they also have the black tip to their tails. Yes, Nikki.
What happens if the mum sadly dies? What happens then?
Well, then the male will quite often step in to take care of the youngsters. And I mean, of course, quite often, like in most mammals, when one parent dies, the other takes on the role of looking after the young. Here is the stoat's range. As you can see, it's not very many of them in the Highlands of Scotland, but then again, up there it is quite difficult to live. The next animal I'm going to show you is one of my favourite birds in all of Britain. It's the golden eagle of Scotland. Now, the golden eagle holds the title of the second largest bird of prey in Britain. Of course, the biggest title belongs to the white-tailed eagle, but the golden eagle is, without question, Britain's most iconic bird of prey. For thousands of years, this bird's image has been used to symbolise majesty, strength and victory. For example, soldiers of Rome marched behind eagle standards which represented the honour of their army units. And unfortunately, the eagle's power as an image also led it into darker associations, like when it was seen clutching the swastika in between its talons on the uniforms of countless German soldiers who were fighting for the Nazis in World War II. But also, the golden eagle was among the only two birds, including the gerfalcon, that only the king was allowed to fly in medieval era. The golden eagle lives in the highlands and mountainous parts of Scotland, where around 440 pairs currently nest. Because while some are slowly spreading to the north of England, they quite often prefer to stay in Scotland. And of course, you're very unlikely to see a golden eagle by a roadside telegraph pole or tree. Such a bird might potentially be a buzzard. But in Scotland, it is likely to see a golden eagle by the roadside, but it might be a buzzard. And of course, golden eagles' favourite prey is game birds, mountain and brown hares, and rabbits. But believe it or not, these birds can actually take prey as big as a fox, a sheep, or even a deer. And of course, in the winter months, they feed heavily on dead meat, like scavenging on animals that have failed to survive the difficult conditions of the bleak mountainside. This is mainly red deer and sheep. Next up is, of course, golden eagles mate for life, and they will return to the same nest whenever possible. The pair usually produce 2 chicks, but usually only the strongest and healthiest chick will survive. And of course, a golden eagle's nest, also known as an eyrie, is a very large structure which can be used each breeding season. The eagles just repair it when needed and use a fresh lining. Golden eagles are very ferocious hunters, because they can spot their prey from a long distance with eyesight that is 8 times more powerful than a human's. And after a high-speed swoop, they stab into their prey, which is usually a hare or a rabbit, with talons as big as kitchen knives. And of course, they can't turn as sharply as a hare without it being possible of risking a life-threatening injury. That and their eyesight being mainly based around movement are their only weaknesses when it comes to hunting. And can actually say that a golden eagle has a very powerful grip strength, because a few years ago when I was at a falconry centre, I actually held a female golden eagle on my hand. Her name was Freya, and tragically she was shot in the wing at 3 years old by a farmer who claimed he was worried for his livestock. But of course, he ended up going to jail. And since then, Freya had been living at the falconry centre in very good human hands, and she was a very hefty bird, but I can tell you her grip strength was incredible. In fact, if I hadn't been wearing the thick leather gauntlet, her handler told me she would probably be crushing every single bone in my hand. And I'm not even joking, when I slightly moved my thumb, she just gripped even tighter. It really hurts. And the handler, when he asked me, did you move for slightly, I said, just a bit, and he said, well, that's quite often what happens when they're hunting, and the more their prey struggle, the tighter the grip gets. Of course, golden eagles aren't able to mate themselves until they are at the age of 3 or 4, and only a quarter of young birds live that long, as life in the mountains can be harsh. Of course, although they are protected by law, golden eagles are still being persecuted by egg thieves, hunters, gamekeepers, and quite often farmers who see them as a threat to livestock. But in truth, the eagles don't take healthy farm animals, and the reason they have that reputation is quite often because they're seen scavenging on sheep carcasses. But anyone who is caught harming a golden eagle will be very severely punished, with their farming and hunting licence revoked, and quite often a lengthy time in prison. So this is their range in Scotland. As you can see, they're still not in England yet, but they are slowly starting to spread back to the rest of Britain. Hopefully, fingers crossed, in 20 years or so, we could have golden eagles back. The next animal is probably our most famous, but also one of our most elusive animals, the red fox. The red fox is one of the largest predators in the British Isles. They are found across Britain, being known as animals that have adapted to many different kinds of habitats, like farmland, woodland, but of course even urban areas. And the red fox is a very easy member of the dog family to recognise, mainly because of their characteristic reddish-orange coats, but also their white underside and white-tipped tail. And of course, they are very distinct. They also have a very distinctive call, which is quite often used to either attract a mate or signal to rivals to stay off their patch. And it may sound pleasant to a female fox, but to humans it is a horrible sound. Foxes have a wide range of prey, because they feed on rabbits, voles, birds, and even occasionally young deer. But as many people know, they have been quite often known to take livestock, especially chickens. As you can see here, they quite often do go for chickens, and as well as ducks and lambs. But they have sometimes been seen going through people's rubbish in cities or scavenging on the carcasses of dead animals. And red foxes can live in a wide range of habitats. I mean, they live in like rural areas, like places with farmland, woodland, heathland, or moorland. But they've also adapted to live in our cities, and of course, it's actually been believed that there's now more foxes in urban areas than there are out in the countryside. And red foxes will mate for life, and they have 3 to 5 cubs known as kits. And but in urban areas, foxes only join briefly to mate.